you so much for joining us today and just talking a little bit about social media, your use of social media. We've seen a lot with what you're doing at the schoolhouse, and we really like what you've been doing. So we just want to ask you a couple of questions about your use of social media and what your thoughts of social media is, especially your usage on Twitter, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, sorry. I guess I'll just start out. There's a lot of hesitancy just from like senior leaders about being on social media and using social media. So, what was your decision process like to actually start using social media?
It's pretty easy. My boss said, he was talking to his leadership, my boss, General Funk, Commander General of Training and Doctrine Command. And he said, hey, we need to dominate the information space. So pick a platform, get on there and dominate it. I kind of hesitated at first because, I got a day job. and, but, when your boss tells you to do something, compliance is, it's not when, it's not if, it's when. So actually I got some help starting out in social media. We had some of the interns at TRADOC, just a wonderful group of young men and women, and they seconded one over to me to kind of get me spun up and how to what it's all about. And I'm a slow learner to be sure on that. But I picked Twitter because I don't understand Instagram.
Mm. So you got this personal touch on there. I mean, I've seen you do like the attack on the troll video, but you also post like pictures of your dog or whatever. So how do you decide like what type of content you wanna put out there?
Okay. Well, it's kind of a long story. So in my previous job, I was the Deputy Commander General of Training and Doctrine Command. So, I was at Fort Eustis. My portfolio at that time included, in addition to, being the second in command, my portfolio was recruiting, Center for Initial Military Training, sessions, and cadet command. And if you recall, back in 2018, we failed to make our accessions mission for recruiting. So, long story short, we got a hold of a survey, what was the disconnect between the United States Army and, the American people. And it was shocking. It was shocking to me. They rattled off, I can't remember the folks that did it, but it was Department of Defense. They rattled off misconceptions about the Army. One, that if you join the Army, you're going to get killed or wounded. Two, that the only job was carrying a rifle and shooting people. Three, you couldn't be married, you couldn't have a family. The prevailing thought was you couldn't own a car. They didn't know you could wear civilian clothes, and they didn't know you could have a pet. And they thought no one in the Army had a sense of humor. And when I heard all this, like most old people, you say, what? None of that's true. So you can't just you just can't just get out there and say, nope, that's wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. So instead, my technique was just to demonstrate, what life's like in the Army, and to try to, like, in a roundabout way, debunk some of these myths. So that was kind of like my overarching strategy. And then when I asked the interns, I said, well, hey, I don't really understand, what do you want me to do on Twitter? And they go, oh, they're just going to be interested in what you do all day. And I go, I work all day. I get up, I do PT, I work all day. I'm tired at the end of the day. They go, no, you do a lot of interesting stuff. And, because what's really cool about TRADOC is I go to the infantry center. I go to the infantry school, the armor school. I go to all these different places, and I am never bored. So I just started, kind of posting what was going on, and people showed an interest. So that was kind of how I got the foothold.
Okay. Okay. Does your PAO or your communication strategist team assist you with your content? Like, what's that process look like?
Well, so early on, I got a lot of help. I mean, I'm really beholden to the interns, so they help me out with what I would call foundational stuff. Like, they kind of, they would come at me with a plan for the month, like, hey, no, this is National Airborne Day, you probably want to post something, and they would help me make a post. And then it was Buffalo Soldier Day, way back when I first started this. And so they started making stuff for me. And then I just said, oh, I can just do that myself.
Mm.
You don't have to do that. And I'll tell you what they had the hardest time doing, explaining to me what a hashtag was. I swear to God, they go, sir, so at the end of a month, they came in, they said, okay, here's who's following you. Here's who you're following. And there was no rhyme or reason to who I followed.
Right.
They said, well, why do you follow who you follow, sir? And I said, well, I saw this post. I thought it was interesting. I looked at the person's bio, and they were like a former soldier, or they were a drill sergeant or something. I said, oh, I just thought they were interesting. So I kind of followed them. And then they started analyzing who was following me. We don't do that anymore because the numbers are, daunting, but, and it really doesn't matter to me who follows or not, but, I was aiming to start, start the conversation, communicate with soldiers and families, and then, in the larger perspective, just kind of communicate to the nation at large. Not that I'm communicating with the nation, but there's a lot of what we call influencers, not social media influencers, but moms, dads, brothers, sisters, uncles. So, just giving them the message of what's going on in the Army, generally from day to day. That's kind of the direction that we took. So they were a big help, but you can tell I do my own content because there's plenty of misspelling in there. If I was paying someone to do my stuff for me, there would be no misspellings.
No, I think that authenticity, sir, it goes a long way, and we talk about that at the schoolhouse a lot, about bringing your own voice to your content. So, are there people in your community, being a lieutenant general, like that are like naysayers, or people who are like, well, I don't like that, maybe don't like your approach? I mean, do you see that at all?
Yeah, well, for one, social media is very risky, so you have to be cautious. If you're on an official account, I'm right out there, so there's plenty of people who disagree with what I'm doing. I really don't care because I try to stay within the Department of the Army guidelines for social media use. To give us guidelines on do's and don'ts, but if you pretty much fall back on the Army values, you can't go wrong, but yeah, again, when your commander tells you, and for good reasons, so General Funk said, hey, we need to get in the information space, and then it wasn't long after that COVID hit. So it's an alternate means of communicating with the force, but more importantly, I kind of view Twitter in this particular instance as like a radio net. And my background is I'm a cavalry officer, so I'm used to listening to the radio nets, like multiple radio nets, and so you got to kind of be able to listen to multiple things going on simultaneously. But you kind of pick up a lot. A lot of it's white noise, but like one of the things I've learned on social media is when I see something and it's something that say it's a question or misinformation or a salient comment. Like if someone posts, I wonder why we do X, and I look at it and I go, dang, I got the same question. Well, I know who handles that. Like Gary Brito is the G1 of the Army. He's also the co-chair for the People First Task Force. So, as things come at me during the day, sometimes like on the weekends, I kind of, do my catch-up work. I'll find something and I'll sling it to someone who really knows what the answer is. And more often than not, we've been able to like directly connect with people and, give them the answer or help them out or point them in the right direction. So there's great value. So I don't know why, if my peers and, fellow, let's say general officers, occasionally let's say, oh, I'm not getting on Twitter, it's too dangerous. I'm like, really? You're afraid of Twitter? I'm afraid of EFPs. I don't like RPGs. and I know what an RPK sounds like coming at me. And I genuinely have fear for those things. But, Twitter, or social media, I guess in general, if you're, if you kind of just use the arm, you don't need a manual or anything, but if you just kind of say, hey, you know, is this something I should engage on or not? And and early on, I got into what I call Twitter firefights. They're
Mm,
useless.
mm,
Uh, so I've learned how to mute people. There's some folks out there. I mean, I know everybody knows this. There's some really angry people out there,
mm,
and I don't know why they're angry. But the ones that kind of shock me are the retired military who, never in my life, I still think back to like one of my battalion commanders. He retired as lieutenant. No, he retired as a colonel, right? And here I am, a 3-star. When I meet him on the street, he's Rogue Six, and I couldn't think of calling him by his first name. I always would call him sir, and my retired sergeant major, same thing. And yet, like sergeant major of the Army, I am aghast at what some active duty soldiers are, the tone that they take with the sergeant major of our Army. But you just kind of like, I just ignore that and try to just continue, my mission, which is listen and then inform and then just uh, be a presence.
mm, mm. Oh, that's good, sir. Um, so I know you talked a little bit about a risk assessment or risk analysis when you were on the social media sites. Is that something that's like constant day to day? Is it like when I'm posting this, should I respond to this comment? Should I not respond to this comment? Kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. So uh, after I've been on it, I don't know, I'm not sure how long I've been on Twitter, but after it's kind of like going to the National Training Center. Battle period 1, battle period 2. You
Mm,
get scuffed up in battle period 1. You AAR, do an after action review, kind of figure out, hey, what worked, what didn't work. And I had a lot of people help me out. They're like, you know do's and don'ts. Like here's one. This is kind of funny. So they have all these ICY, like in case you missed it,
yes.
or OBTW. Like I didn't know what that was, and
Mm,
when I would see it, I would go, I might just like be curious and go, hey, what does OBTW mean? And I didn't know you could just like go to um, let me see. This thing is killing me. One, two. Okay, all right, my back.
yeah, you're back, sir.
Sorry about that. So, you know, I somebody posted something, apparently it was nasty, and I wrote, "Hey, what does this mean?" And one of my sergeants down the hallway, Sergeant Keating, he's a great guy. So Sergeant Keating came running down the hallway. And he said, "Sir, you need to delete that. Don't ask. Don't ask. If you got a question, you should come to me." So I mean, there was these little, during the course of getting introduced to Twitter, I made a lot of stumbles and stuff like that, and occasionally, I do get talked to.
Hmm.
But I don't want to be a distraction to the Army senior leadership. I don't want to be a distraction to my command. So, I mean, you just got to kind of use some common sense rules. First off, like I was watching Twitter on the election, and I do not need a RAND study to tell me that you will not change somebody's vote by a little tweet you post. So, you can just, have an exchange. Keep it relatively professional. By that I don't mean you don't need to be a monk on here. Uh, you can still be passionate, but just be respectful of other people. And at the end of the day, if you treat everybody with dignity and respect, you'll be okay. And I got to admit, I got a quirky sense of humor. One of the posts I put up, which I thought was, the trials and tribulations of getting good on the Army Combat Fitness Test, the ACFT. People just kept complaining about, the leg tuck.
Mm,
So I did this tweet. I had my guys like videotape it. I called it the answering machine, and it was somebody calling to complain about the ACFT. And I said, if you don't like the leg tech, press 1. If you if you don't like, you know, if you, you know, I can't remember what it was, but it, what happened was I got a lot of feedback from people that I really, you know, liked from my friends on there, and they like, they took it personal. So I kind of learned a lesson that, you know, you just got to temper your sense of humor and think, you know, think about the second order effects.
Mm,
So I think I've deleted a total of 5 tweets. The rest of it, I don't care if someone doesn't like it. It's like
mm,
some retired guys didn't, you know, came at me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way.
mm, mm.
I learned about the mute button. Mute button works pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, you know, how do you like, was there any post that you put out there that you kind of not really regretted, but like just kind of didn't perform as well as you thought? And how'd you handle those situations?
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, that's probably the most glaring example. When I did something that actually I did it. There was like another one. I did one that got like on the run up to Army Navy. I'm gonna, you know, I'm a big Army supporter. So
Mhm.
I have a real good friend I met on Twitter, the Vice Chief of Information Operations at Navy, and I posted something, and it went over the line. It was a little bit too rough on, you know, on Navy. It was I can't remember exactly what I did, but you know, and she's a close friend of mine, reached out and said, "Hey, that, you know, I don't think, you know, we had a conversation," and I was like, "Oh man, you know, I didn't think about that," so I deleted that tweet.
Mm,
And but I think, you know, if you have to think about something too long, I just don't post it.
right.
Now, I mean, I've kind of learned that. So that, like I said, you know, sense of humor it can backfire occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, you know, I tell my fellow generals, hey man, if your boss tells you to get in the information space and get the exchange going, because I listen a lot. We get a lot of great information, especially when on rapidly changing situations.
Mm,
You know, during the course of this COVID,
mm,
it's been a good way to get information out. You know, to reinforce specific Army and training and doctrine command messages. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on social media. It just can't consume you.
yeah. Right. Right. So wow, sir, it's like you leave me these great nuggets every time I'm about to ask you a question, and then you answer it. I was gonna say, like, what is your biggest takeaway? Like, what is the thing that you've learned the most out of this social media experiment, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, how about this? You know, whenever I pass somebody in the hallway, you know, I always go, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, you meet somebody, shake their hand. "Hey, how are you?" It's like, "Oh, I'm great. I'm fine. I'm loving it here." You know, so you get this false sense of security that you got a great climate, you got a great team. People are, you know, powering through the pandemic, and you know, they're powering through the daily trials and tribulations of, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot to process. You know, just take current events right now, what's going on in Afghanistan. Uh, you know, I mean, that's crushing. Uh, so, you know, when you're a colonel, a general, or whatever, you know, I've been general for over a decade, right? And hardly anybody, you know, when you walk by and say, "Hey, how you doing?" They go, "Yeah, I'm really having problems, sir."
Right.
I've only had like 1 or 2 people ever do that, but on Twitter, you know, you just kind of hear this drumbeat of the real pulse of, you know, what's going on out there. And I follow a lot of commands, and I see the exchanges that they're having. You know, soldiers. You kind of find out what's going on at these different posts, and that's one thing. All of us will do a trade. Like I know that General Funk does it. I do it. General Gervais does it. When we see something going sideways, like yesterday, something went sideways. Somebody was administering the ACFT, and they weren't like giving them points for the leg tuck. They were only going go no go, 60 points. And I just said, "Hey, you know, where was this?" And they said, "You know, Unit X." So all I did was just like slung it to Center for Initial Military Training, and I slung it to the the general that has that sub command, and he's not gonna personally intervene, but it's gonna rapidly, you know, get down that we got, you know, a deviation from the standard somewhere. It's not the preferred method of doing it. You know, people ought to use their chain of command, But, you know, uh, a key takeaway for social media is things aren't always hunky dory out there. And I find, when the chief staff of the Army tells us he wants to build cohesive teams, the sergeant major, you can kind of see where we're not meeting it. And most of the times it's communication.
Mm.
I really do believe that.
Okay. Oh, that's good, sir. Well, I got a lot of people out that are tuned in today. So we got over 1,400 people registered for this conference. What is it
Oh, are
that
we
you?
live or are you?
No, no, we're not live right now, sir. But it'll go out at a scheduled time, and people will be watching and rewatching it and watch the interview. If you, with all these eyes, public affairs officials, communication strategists, I mean, what would be the advice that you want to pass along to them?
Oh, okay. I'd say, there's a theory, and so I'm a cavalry officer. It's what I've been doing all my life. In fact, I can't believe it. It's Stetson Friday, and I didn't have my Stetson on. But so I'm a cab guy, and there's a lot of us out there, and there's some tenets that you live by, and one of them is stay focused on the reconnaissance objective, and the other one is develop the situation through action. So if you're an innocent bystander watching things happen, you're not helping. So I think leadership has got to get involved. They got to get in the mix. You got to get out there. You got to take risk. You got to develop the situation through action. If you fall back on your Army values, if you treat everybody with dignity and respect, and you just ignore the lunatic fringe that's out there, you can have a positive impact, and you can help bridge the communications gap. And so for the public affairs, they got to bridge the communications gap not only between commanders, the Department of the Army and our soldiers, and the Department of the Army civilians and the contractors and family members on our posts. They're also communicating and sharing the word with the American public. So I'd say get aggressive. Nobody ever wants a timid cavalry scout. There are no successful timid cavalry scouts. And every now and again you got a little bighorn, but every now and again you got the cavalry coming to the rescue. So you got to find the happy medium in there. Get aggressive, stay focused on the reconnaissance objective, and develop the situation through action. And if your commander's timid, I feel sorry for you, but maybe you gotta take some personal risk yourself, because at the end of the day, we're soldiers, and Department of the Army professional civilians in the United States Army, and our country expects us to get out there and take risks, just like the 82nd Airborne Division is doing right now in Afghanistan with the Marines and the Air Force and the State Department. I mean, we're all keeping our fingers crossed, but I can guarantee you they're going to accomplish their mission. And I don't need anybody to tell me, hey, shh, don't go out on a limb there. I can guarantee you that Major General C.D. Donahue and the Marines and the paratroopers that are on that airfield are going to accomplish their mission without a doubt. And I think we should be talking about that.
Mm. Hey, sir, that is a great note to end on, actually, sir. Wow. So I learned a lot from you. I mean, I really did. It's great that you're applying the principles, a lot of things that we teach at the schoolhouse, into your use of social, just the planning and the everything that you're doing. And it's great watching you on Twitter, sir. I do check you out from time to time. No, it's really interesting. It's refreshing to get that leadership perspective and that comfortability on Twitter. So, again, unless you have anything you'd like to add or anything else you'd like to say, this has been a great interview, I think.
Well, I mean, since there's folks listening, I know there's going to be Afghanistan veterans out there. I know there's going to be some family members. I have a personal connection to a classmate of mine, a fellow member of the TRADOC leadership team, and there's been a lot of people who've suffered a personal loss in Afghanistan, and I would just say, a soldier's job is to do their duty. And I think that everybody who has been serving their country, either in the generating force or the operating force, Department of the Army civilians and family members, and everybody who's pitched in to fight, and the folks that are boots on the ground right now can stand tall with the duty that they did. They did their duty, and I'm really proud to march alongside of them. Look out for your battle buddies. Don't take anything for granted. It never hurts to reach out, either with a text, a tweet, a phone call, or a knock on the door. So hope you all have a great week.
Hey, thank you very much, sir.